novel, Wake of War, is the final book of the Soulfire series. Her work spans multiple genres, including science fiction, psychological thrillers, dark fantasy, and realistic fiction. She currently lives here in Austin. Please welcome Alisar Eido.
Longer than I thought. Oh my gosh, it's book 3. Yeah! Thanks. So, yeah, it's just setting in like right now. I am not sure what I'm going to do after this series, but I do know that I would not be up here without literally everybody in this room. It's been 3 years that you guys have supported this. Thank you so much, including Malvern's. Thank you, Malvern's. Yeah, without further ado, I'm just gonna drop you kind of into the middle of this book, so I'll bring you up to speed a little bit. As with the last book of any trilogy, you can kind of assume that things are bad. There's disease, there's famine, winter has just set in, there's demons running around everywhere, and 3 of our characters, which are Verena and Fabian and Darius, are all marching north to try to stop a war before it conjures the final horseman. And now Verena's just spent the night sleeping in the snow because there was enemies out to find her. Fabian's just been stabbed, so nobody's in the mood for a fight, but that is what they're gonna get. So, where exactly are we headed? It hurt to speak, but at least it was a distraction from the monotony of the journey. We're following the army, Darius answered her. What kind of an army? Verena blurted. She immediately pictured the otherworldly kind that she'd faced before. Fabian reassured her. The human kind. Helena and I overheard orders as we fled the city. They're sending troops to Ferrex to stomp out the rebels that started the fires. Darius threw a sly look over his shoulder as he led the horse. Imagine trying to explain that. Why you can send an army, but not the supplies and aid to keep them from rebelling in the first place. Think I look forward to what history will say about that. Not that the Northern Territories will put up much of a fight when they're sick and starving. The advice Corvus had imparted to Verena bubbled to the surface of her pain-weary mind. She hadn't told them. Corvidaeus had warned against a journey north, but revealing that now might mean turning back. So until she could walk instead of ride, it might be better kept a secret. She would not face a retreat. The day faded into a deeper gray. Snow again, Darius complained with a frustrated glare at the heavens. Hope not. Not much cover out here, Fabian said, scanning the opened countryside with a hand shading his eyes. Verena shivered at the thought of more snow, which renewed her aching. The stirrings of a headache throbbed in her temples to the booming rhythm of her pulse. She joined Fabian in squinting at the distance for possible shelter when she spotted a dark blotch that grew on the horizon. She blinked and shook her head, but it did not vanish. The shape swelled over the hills like a lost piece of night. The steady booming of her pulse grew with it until it consumed her whole attention. Please tell me you see that, Verena uttered. Her 2 companions followed her gaze and found the approaching oddity. I see it, but what is it? Fabian shrugged. The call of a raven rose again from nowhere and from everywhere, as if the wind were infected with its alarm. It's almost like something flying? Like wings, Darius puzzled. Then you hear it too. I thought it was just my head, the girl rasped. The darkness spread along the horizon as they watched, undulating in a slow wave. Get down, Fabian ordered. He reached up and grabbed Verena off of the horse. Whatever the hell that is, we've got to hide. Where? Darius spread his arms and turned in a circle, indicating the vast, treeless expanse surrounding them. There's enough of a rise in that hill. Maybe we could duck behind it, Fabian said with a nod to a swell in the earth just off their path. They dashed for it, laying as flat as they could on the side of the mound. Verena's eyes watered as her limbs stretched for the first time since frost had locked them in place. Fabian grimaced too. As soon as he'd set her on the grass, he clutched the spot where he'd been stabbed. She made as if to comment, but he waved her off. I'm fine, he insisted, though his voice sounded muted under the titanic boom of beating wings as the darkness drew closer. The horse stomped and tossed its head, letting out shrill cries of distress as Darius fought to keep its lead. The sound rose to a deafening volume. Tremors shivered through the cold ground. Only then did she realize the thunder was not one sound, but 3 separate ones, all close together. Verena, curious, pushed herself to the top of the hill on her stomach, using the snow-slicked grass to peer over the top. At a distance, it had been impossible to comprehend the scale of the onyx shape, but the creature's wingspan could have enveloped an entire house. But up close, she realized that they were not wings at all. Instead, it was the spread of a vast cape. She could hear Darius yelling for her to come down, but she did not obey. She had been fixed to the spot by the outlandish sight before her. Fabian and Darius crawled up to collect her, but found themselves transfixed as well. It was no bird. A rider, clad in armor made of the most lightless black stone, sat astride an ebony beast, galloping full tilt in their direction, each boom an obsidian hoof meeting the earth. Neither rider nor steed had eyes, just empty sockets, blind yet unwavering on their path. A crown of shale fused to the rider's head like a forest of knives. His cape streaked behind, billowing in the wind, flapping like the glistening wings of a vulture with each stride of his horse. Darius threw an arm over Verena and slid back down the mound with her. Fabian followed, and the 3 huddled there, praying to be overlooked. Fabian drew a sword, more out of habit than the belief they could actually fend off such a creature. The wind howled on all sides, turning Verena's loose hair into whips that stung her cheeks and neck. Shadow fell across them, and the pressure dropped. She could feel herself scream, but heard nothing over the roar of the gale and the unrelenting rhythm of hooves. But as quickly as the darkness covered them, it fell away. The rider pressed on with no signs he'd noticed them. They stayed flat in stunned silence and watched the entity go. Distance transformed the cape back into wings as the creature vanished over the horizon to the north. The wind died back, leaving them alone with the sound of their own labored breathing. Verena checked to her right. There was Fabian, staring at his own hands as if shocked he still existed. On her left, Darius's jaw hung slack, his head gently shaking. Somewhere in the shield of the thick clouds above them, a raven called. That, Fabian stammered. Marhasim, Darius finished for him. War. Verena gazed straight at the place where the creature had vanished. Well, if that was war, suppose we're on the right track? Or a very wrong one. Darius looked to her with a fear-pale face. If you've seen him, that means his ride's already begun.